Rain pounded the flight deck, wind tearing at the rotor blades. And then, against all odds, the rusty relic lifted into the storm like it was 1975 again. The younger mechanics had been placing bets all week. $20, says the old bird, doesn't even start. 50 says it falls apart before leaving the hangar. They laughed at Chief Warrant Officer Samuel, Iron Eagle Rodriguez, who'd spent 37 years keeping America's helicopters airborne through desert sandstorms, jungle humidity, and Arctic freezes that would ground modern aircraft. What they didn't see beneath his oil-stained coveralls were hands that had rebuilt rotor assemblies under enemy fire, performed emergency repairs at 8,000 feet, while insurgents fired rocket-propelled grenades, and coaxed dying aircraft home when younger pilots had already written off their crews as casualties. Rodriguez had volunteered for the impossible mission when Hurricane Elena threatened to destroy the coastal town of Mercy Bay, where 300 civilians trapped in a collapsed hospital had less than 2 hours before the storm surge would sweep them into the Atlantic Ocean. Every modern rescue helicopter had been grounded by the Category 4 winds, and the National Guard declared the mission too dangerous for their advanced aircraft. But Rodriguez knew something the younger generation had forgotten. Sometimes the old machines, built when engineering meant overbuilding, could survive what newer technology couldn't handle. The Vietnam-era UH-1 Huey, sitting in the museum hangar, had been his personal project for 18 months, restored with spare parts scavenged from military junkyards and rebuilt with the stubborn precision of someone who understood that in aviation, pride kills and humility keeps you alive. Welcome to Silent Salute, where we reveal that America's greatest heroes often serve long after their official retirement, using decades of hard-earned expertise to save lives when modern technology fails and conventional wisdom says impossible. Before we share this incredible story of determination triumphing over doubt, tell us in the comments about a time when experience proved more valuable than youth. And if you believe that true expertise comes from years of dedication rather than shiny new equipment, hit that subscribe button to support our mission of honoring those who serve without recognition. The storm had intensified beyond all weather predictions, turning what should have been a routine evacuation into a nightmare scenario that tested every assumption about modern rescue capabilities. Wind gusts reached 180 miles per hour, creating conditions that would tear apart aircraft designed for normal weather patterns, while driving rain reduced visibility to near zero and made instrument flying nearly impossible even for the most experienced pilots. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez, the base commander, stood in the operations center watching weather radar that showed Elena's eye wall approaching the coast like a living monster designed to destroy everything in its path. Rodriguez, this is suicide. No aircraft can fly in these conditions. We need to wait for the storm to pass. Rodriguez adjusted his worn flight helmet, the same one he'd used during 3 tours in Vietnam, 2 deployments to Iraq, and countless rescue missions across 4 decades of military service that had taught him the difference between calculated risk and reckless endangerment. Ma'am, with respect, those people don't have time to wait for perfect conditions. That hospital is built on reclaimed wetland that'll be underwater in 90 minutes. Modern helicopters are built for efficiency, not for flying through hell. Sometimes you need a machine that was designed when engineers still believed in overbuilding everything. The Huey's twin rotors had been balanced by hand, its engine rebuilt with tolerances that exceeded factory specifications, and every critical component upgraded with improvements learned from decades of combat experience and emergency repairs performed under impossible conditions. Rodriguez had installed redundant systems that didn't exist on the original aircraft, reinforced the airframe beyond military specifications, and modified the flight controls based on lessons learned from thousands of hours flying in conditions that would ground modern pilots. Captain James Viper Thompson, the base's senior pilot with over 2,000 flight hours in advanced aircraft, tried one final time to dissuade Rodriguez from what appeared to be a suicide mission disguised as heroic rescue work. "Chief, I've got more stick time than anyone here, and I'm telling you this storm will kill you before you get halfway to the target. Those civilians are already dead. Don't join them." Rodriguez's response carried the weight of someone who had survived more impossible situations than most pilots would face in 10 lifetimes of flying. understanding that sometimes experience trumps youth and determination overcomes technology. Captain Thompson, you've got impressive flight hours and perfect conditions with modern equipment. I've got ugly hours in broken aircraft during enemy fire when failure meant my crew went home in body bags. There's a difference between flying hours and survival hours. The pre-flight inspection took Rodriguez 47 minutes, checking every bolt, wire, and fluid level with the obsessive attention to detail that separated veteran mechanics from technicians who relied on computer diagnostics and maintenance manuals written by engineers who had never turned a wrench under combat conditions. His hands moved across the aircraft with intimate knowledge of every component, understanding how each system would react under extreme stress and knowing exactly which backup procedures would keep him airborne when primary systems failed under the punishment that Hurricane Elena was about to deliver. The engine startup sequence proceeded with mechanical precision that reflected thousands of hours maintaining aircraft in conditions where mistakes killed people and shortcuts led to catastrophic failures that destroyed crews and missions alike. Rodriguez monitored each gauge with the focused attention of someone who understood that in aviation, complacency was indistinguishable from suicide. Tower, this is Rescue 7 requesting immediate departure for Mercy Bay Hospital. Conditions are deteriorating, and we're running out of time. Air Traffic Controller Maria Santos, monitoring weather conditions that exceeded every safety protocol in military aviation regulations, tried once more to prevent what appeared to be certain death disguised as heroic rescue attempt. Rescue 7, winds are gusting to 185 miles per hour with zero visibility. You are advised to abort this mission and wait for improved conditions. Rodriguez's response reflected the calculated confidence of someone who had spent decades learning exactly how much punishment aircraft could endure before structural failure, understanding that official limits were designed for normal operations rather than emergency rescues where lives depended on pushing equipment beyond recommended specifications. Tower, Roger. Rescue 7 departing for Mercy Bay. If I don't make radio contact in 30 minutes, assume we didn't make it, and send someone else when the weather clears. The Huey lifted off into conditions that would have been considered impossible for helicopter operations, immediately buffeted by wind shear that threw the aircraft sideways, while torrential rain hammered the windscreen and reduced forward visibility to the range of automobile headlights and fog. Rodriguez fought the controls with muscle memory developed over 37 years of flying aircraft in conditions that ranged from merely dangerous to absolutely suicidal. Understanding that helicopter flight in extreme weather required constant adjustments based on feel rather than instrument readings that couldn't react quickly enough to sudden wind changes. The flight to Mercy Bay became a masterclass in survival flying, as Rodriguez used every technique learned from decades of combat operations to keep the Huey airborne through wind conditions that exceeded the aircraft's design specifications by margins that would have grounded any pilot relying solely on training rather than experience. This is impossible, Captain Thompson muttered in the operations center, watching radar track Rodriguez's progress through weather conditions that violated every principle of safe helicopter operations. He should have crashed 10 minutes ago. Lieutenant Martinez, monitoring emergency frequencies for any communication from Rodriguez, while coordinating with Coast Guard units standing by to search for wreckage, found herself admitting something that challenged everything she thought she understood about aviation and leadership. Maybe impossible is just another word for something we haven't figured out how to do yet. Rodriguez has more experience with impossible situations than our entire flight crew combined. The approach to Mercy Bay Hospital tested every skill Rodriguez had developed during 4 decades of military aviation. As he maneuvered the Huey through wind shear that would have destroyed modern helicopters while maintaining enough control to execute a precision landing in a parking lot surrounded by debris that could damage rotor blades or puncture fuel lines. The evacuation proceeded with military efficiency, as Rodriguez kept the engine running while medical personnel loaded 37 critical patients into an aircraft designed for 12 passengers, understanding that weight distribution and balance calculations meant the difference between successful takeoff and catastrophic crash that would kill everyone aboard. Chief, we're way over maximum weight, shouted Nurse Patricia Williams over the rotor noise, concerned about aircraft limitations that seemed to contradict basic physics and safety regulations. Rodriguez's response reflected decades of experience operating aircraft in conditions where textbook limitations became suggestions rather than absolute rules, understanding that desperate situations required calculated risks based on comprehensive knowledge of aircraft capabilities under extreme conditions. Ma'am, maximum weight assumes normal flight conditions and safety margins designed for routine operations. Emergency rescue missions operate under different parameters, and this old bird was built when engineers still believed in overbuilding everything. The takeoff from Mercy Bay required Rodriguez to use every technique learned from combat operations where aircraft routinely operated beyond design specifications, gradually building airspeed while managing power settings that pushed the engine beyond normal operating limits, while maintaining enough control authority to handle sudden wind gusts that could flip the aircraft. The return flight through Hurricane Elena became legendary among military aviators as an example of what experienced pilots could accomplish with determination, skill, and aircraft built when engineering meant creating machines capable of surviving punishment that would destroy modern equipment designed for efficiency rather than durability. Rescue 7 to Tower, inbound with 37 passengers. Request immediate medical support and runway priority. Air Traffic Controller Santos, who had spent the past hour expecting to coordinate search and rescue operations for Rodriguez's wreckage, found herself coordinating the most successful emergency evacuation in base history instead of the aircraft recovery mission she had anticipated. Rescue 7 Roger. Medical teams standing by. You just accomplished something that will be talked about for the next 50 years. Rodriguez's landing at the base occurred with the precision of someone whose entire career had been built on the understanding that successful missions required attention to detail that continued until the aircraft was safely parked and the engine shut down according to procedures designed to prevent post-flight emergencies. The 37 patients Rodriguez evacuated from Mercy Bay Hospital included war veterans whose own military service had taught them to recognize exceptional skill and dedication when they witnessed it firsthand. Master Sergeant Jennifer Steele Davis, recovering from injuries sustained during her 4th deployment to Afghanistan, understood exactly what Rodriguez had accomplished through sheer determination and professional expertise. Chief Rodriguez, what you just did violates every safety regulation in military aviation, and it was absolutely the right decision. You saved lives that would have been lost because everyone else was too focused on following rules instead of accomplishing the mission. Rodriguez's response reflected the humility of someone whose long career had taught him that heroism often consisted of doing necessary work without seeking recognition or praise from people who hadn't faced similar challenges. Sergeant Davis, I just did what needed doing with the equipment available. Sometimes the old ways work better than new technology, and sometimes experience matters more than following procedures designed for normal situations. The investigation that followed Rodriguez's hurricane rescue mission became a case study in military aviation training programs, demonstrating how decades of experience and comprehensive understanding of aircraft capabilities could accomplish missions that appeared impossible to personnel trained only on modern equipment and standard operating procedures. Colonel Patricia Hawk Wilson, reviewing the mission parameters and weather conditions that Rodriguez had survived, realized that her assumptions about aviation limits had been based on textbook knowledge rather than practical experience with aircraft operations under extreme conditions. Chief Rodriguez, according to every computer model and weather analysis, your mission should have resulted in catastrophic aircraft failure and total crew loss. How did you know the aircraft could handle those conditions? Rodriguez's explanation provided insights that transformed how military aviation approached emergency rescue operations and equipment capabilities, demonstrating that institutional knowledge and hands-on experience often exceeded theoretical limitations and computer modeling. Colonel Wilson, I've been working on helicopters since before your computer models existed. I know exactly how much punishment this aircraft can endure because I've rebuilt every component and tested it under conditions that exceed normal specifications. Sometimes you need someone who learned aviation when survival depended on understanding your equipment instead of trusting technology. The younger mechanics who had ridiculed Rodriguez's restoration project and questioned his capabilities found themselves studying his techniques and seeking mentorship from someone whose expertise exceeded their combined experience and formal training. Aircraft mechanic first class David Wrench Martinez, who had previously dismissed Rodriguez as an outdated technician clinging to obsolete methods, discovered that traditional mechanical skills and comprehensive system knowledge provided capabilities that modern diagnostic equipment couldn't match. Chief Rodriguez, I owe you an apology. I thought your old-school methods were inefficient and outdated. Now I realize that you understand these aircraft better than our computer systems do. Rodriguez used the recognition from his hurricane rescue mission to establish training programs that combined traditional mechanical expertise with modern technology, creating educational opportunities that preserved institutional knowledge while adapting to contemporary aviation requirements and safety standards. Mechanic Martinez, modern technology is incredibly capable, but it's designed for normal operations under ideal conditions. When equipment fails or conditions exceed design parameters, you need to understand how systems actually work instead of relying on diagnostic computers that can't think beyond their programming. The training programs that Rodriguez developed influenced military aviation maintenance throughout the armed forces, establishing new standards for combining traditional skills with contemporary technology while preserving the institutional knowledge that enabled exceptional performance during emergency situations and equipment failures. Captain Thompson, whose initial skepticism about Rodriguez's capabilities had been transformed into professional respect and admiration, became one of Rodriguez's strongest advocates for recognition and advancement within military aviation leadership. Chief Rodriguez, your hurricane mission demonstrated that experience and determination can accomplish objectives that exceed theoretical limitations and computer modeling. Your approach to aviation maintenance and emergency operations should be standard training for all military pilots and mechanics. Rodriguez continued his service for another 8 years, training the next generation of military aviators while developing maintenance procedures that combined traditional mechanical expertise with modern diagnostic technology, creating hybrid approaches that enhanced both aircraft reliability and crew safety during normal operations and emergency situations. His legacy included 17 pilots whose careers were saved by Rodriguez's maintenance expertise, 43 successful rescue missions accomplished with aircraft that other mechanics had declared unflyable, and comprehensive training programs that preserved institutional knowledge while adapting to contemporary aviation technology and operational requirements. The most important lesson you can learn, Rodriguez would tell new mechanics during training sessions that became legendary throughout military aviation, is that textbook limitations are designed for normal situations. Emergency operations require comprehensive understanding of how equipment actually works when everything goes wrong and you're the only thing standing between mission success and catastrophic failure. The hurricane rescue mission had provided Rodriguez with the opportunity to demonstrate that decades of experience and comprehensive mechanical knowledge could accomplish objectives that appeared impossible to personnel trained only on modern equipment and standard procedures, validating traditional approaches while establishing new possibilities for emergency aviation operations. Years later, when Chief Warrant Officer Rodriguez retired with full honors and recognition for exceptional service that had influenced military aviation training and emergency rescue capabilities, his story continued inspiring mechanics and pilots who understood that true expertise came from combining knowledge, experience, and determination rather than relying solely on technology and procedures. His example reminded everyone that in aviation, as in all technical fields, the most critical capabilities often belong to people whose expertise exceeded formal training and whose practical knowledge had been earned through decades of hands-on experience with equipment under conditions that tested both human skill and mechanical limits. The moment when the rusty relic lifted into Hurricane Elena had lasted only seconds, but its impact continued for years, demonstrating that true mechanical expertise and aviation skill often resided in the people others dismissed as outdated, and that sometimes the old ways, combined with comprehensive understanding and unshakable determination, could accomplish what modern technology couldn't handle. This story was brought to you by Silent Salute. Before we leave you today, here's our question. Have you ever witnessed someone whose experience and determination exceeded what seemed theoretically possible? Have you worked with professionals whose old-school expertise accomplished objectives that modern technology couldn't handle? Tell us in the comments about moments when traditional skills and hard-earned experience proved more valuable than the latest equipment, and how those discoveries changed your understanding of true expertise and professional capability. And if you believe that some challenges require human knowledge and determination rather than technological solutions, hit that subscribe button to support our channel's mission of honoring those who serve with skill and courage when others say impossible. Nobody calls Rodriguez's methods outdated anymore. Not after watching his 40-year-old helicopter accomplish a rescue mission that grounded every modern aircraft on the base.